Okay.
So the attendance.
This is going to be interesting. We don't have microphone.
Thanks for being such.
I will open the city council Tuesday, July 6, 2021, regular meeting. I need approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
That's what we want.
Okay. I want to welcome everybody back to our first real public meeting again. It seems like we haven't had a crowd like this in more than a year. So welcome and thank you for coming.
Let's sit here.
Notice I have brought back the hammer. So Sharon,
Oh.
Sharon was the last one to use it.
I have to pick on somebody. So with that, we will move to the consent agenda for the minutes of the past several meetings. Do I have a motion or any?
I move to approve the minutes for
That
the
works.
June 1st, June 8th, June 10th, June 16th, June 19th, and June 23rd.
Seconded. Seconded. Discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
I make a motion to commend Jen for getting them done.
Really?
What are you doing? Minutes. What are you doing? Minutes.
Okay, so we will open the public comment. That's what I suspect is most everybody's here for. We'll just dive right in. I know people have signed up, but if you haven't, you need to sign your name for the record and your mailing address. It looks like there's going to be several folks speaking, so let's try and keep it brief if you can. So, who's first? Deb.
I think I've got mine for a minute. Proud of that. Everybody, and so I'm here to support the medical, police, fire, CERT, medical teams, city employees, and which I see as the foundation of safety. I think they need to be upgraded to priority status. One thing I need to know is during the busiest day of the year in Cannon Beach in the summer, how many people are in town here? Is it 30 to 50? I heard. What is it?
When we had the highest sandcastle population, it was around 20 to 30,000.
Okay, so 20 to 30,000.
Is that right, Jason?
Okay, that's what I needed to know. I've heard some figures and I didn't want to repeat what I didn't know for sure.
And we never did it again.
So on this weekend, that kind of a thing, about how many do you think then probably?
No, I'd have to go through the chamber to find out how many people occupancy wise.
So we'll just say 20, okay? Does that sound fair? No?
I think that's a lot.
I don't know.
Okay, so anyway, the fire department. Where's Mark? Oh, there's Mark, okay. They are running around and with a couple people and some volunteers, and they are the type that are running into burning buildings and saving people. The police are facing, there's some real cuckoos out there these days that have authority issues, and they potentially can have a gun put to their face. And will they see their families again? I think that's a real fear. If we walk a mile in their shoes every day. And I think their safety is really, I mean, I just feel for them and what they go through. I think we need to bring all of that back in our society because we need them. So what is that worth? If you were doing that with your life, what would that be worth to you? It's not something I would scrimp and save on. I would give them the best up-to-date equipment. And with the future of tourism increasing, I'd be considering their safety because one of the firemen, one on per shift, when there is, say, 20,000 people in town, or if you want to say 10, one police officer who's going into a hotel with a psychotic patient and can't call and get backup out of Seaside, which did happen this last weekend, I think, or the weekend before. by herself would scare the hell out of me. I mean, I worked in the crisis unit, and when we had a patient go off like that, we had 6 of us on them, restraining them immediately. Because they're psychotic, they're hearing voices, and there was some of these happening in hotels, okay? So the city hall is falling apart. I mean, I guess I'm wondering if it will hold up in an earthquake, and for their morale, I think washing their dirty dishes in the bathroom sink is not okay, and I think they deserve more. So I can speak out, and maybe they can't because they have jobs and they may think that their jobs are on the line if they say what they really feel. Like if Bruce says what he really feels because he's got expertise about what he's studied and looked into and his experience, he shouldn't be reprimanded to say, hey, you're influencing people. I think they should be able to speak their truth, and he should be able to speak his truth, and so should Mark, and they are professionals. So I don't know who else is of higher status to listen to. The medical teams and the CERT and all these people are like the foundation, core foundation and bedrock of this community, and they are our heroes. So they're calling for help now, and they take care of us. So now we need to take care of them. That's all I have to say. And also, I want to show of hands, how many people here support the food and beverage tax? So we're going to take it to a vote. We're going to cause people to have divisiveness, because I just saw somebody leave who gave me the dirtiest look, and he's one of my customers ever. And you know, that divisiveness that's going to be stirred up over the next time till we vote is not healthy. You guys are professionals too. You guys are elected to make decisions, and you can do it. And I don't want to see that kind of thing happen, plus the expense of it and the hassle. So I don't support the election, and I do not support a blue ribbon committee, because people, they argue back and forth. Like you think one way, she thinks one way, and then you cancel each other out and nobody does anything. And we've got too many issues to work through. So I have to move at a faster pace. And you have a lawyer right here on hand can tell you, hey, this one, this one, this one. So, and I'll help you research anytime, okay? Thank you.
Next. Okay.
Well, if nobody else is gonna go, I'll go. Mary Beth Cottle, Ross Lane, 131 Ross Lane. I'm in support of the food and beverage tax. I think that pass-through tax like that is the best way that we can fund the unfunded infrastructure needs and fire department, the safety needs of this town that are so stressed and so overburdened by the number of day trippers and tourists that are here, without putting that burden on the residents. If we had no tourists and we had no day trippers coming down here, our property tax would probably cover what we need. But that huge influx of people coming in daily puts a real stress on our services, and it is a fair way to compensate those of us who live here as well by funding that infrastructure, by funding those safety issues, by creating a structure that will be in place in case of a disaster. If a moderate earthquake is going to take this place down, it's going to be really hellish hard to have a place for the people who need to meet to make the decisions to create a safe environment for the people who are here, residents and visitors, during that time, if we don't have a structure that will accommodate. So that is my opinion. That is my reasoning for that opinion. And again, a pass-through tax, the research done by Devatia, talking to the restaurants in both Yahats and Ashland, found that it did not affect their bottom line. It did not create hostility with their customers. And it did not create any problems. It did fund the things that they needed. The one wonderful thing about this is that a list of priorities can be made, and those priorities, as they are taken care of, more things can be funded as the top ones move off. I think that's great because we are going to have a continued need to update and upgrade our facilities. And this will allow us to do that. Will give us the financing to do it. So that is my little piece. Thank you.
Sharon Hoy, PO Box 973 Cannon Beach. I just want to echo what they both said. It needs to happen. We've got a great opportunity to make the best amount of money for implementing anything. And I would like to urge council to make the decision and not send it to a vote. We didn't send the TLT to a vote. It is a little different, I understand, but it's still something that needs to be done. And, every time we go, any of us travel, we all pay taxes. We don't think anything about it. I was just in Yakima and I paid $2.30 some for a $28 meal. Didn't bother me. It didn't affect the tip I left. And people that come here are used to paying taxes. They're coming from tax states. And I just don't think it's going to be as upsetting as some think it is. I would urge you to do it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ken Potter. I live on Ross Lane, Cannon Beach. I have a little different perspective on this because I've been an independent businessman for most of my life. And I've collected tax in other states and to deal with taxable merchandise and not taxable merchandise. And it's just not a big deal. And when the merchant is compensated for their time for collecting the tax and processing the tax, that it's not a hardship. It's not an expense for the business. It's just one of the things you have to do and you get it done. The businesses, the restaurants in this town have tacked on fees for the cat tax and tacked on fees for for the COVID situation. And it's been a lot more than 5%. And if that hasn't hurt them, I just don't see this 5% as doing any damage. And that, to me, is a big deal. We have almost 10% for the lodging tax, which I think a lot of people perceive as a pretty big hit. But 5%, it just sails right on by. And I think that the ultimate thing is what is the alternative?
what else can we do that would produce the funds that are needed for the services that everyone requires? And to me, it's that simple.
I'm Daryl Conasu. I guess I'm at PO Box 172. And I guess I put together a couple slides just so everyone can see some of the information that I wanted to provide. Kind of summarize some of the comments that have been made over the last month, so everyone can see it. Okay. So we've had a few public comment sessions over the last month, 2 months. During this time, I just went and tallied all the, ones that were in favor versus the ones that were not in favor. As you could tell from the numbers, and then some of them include tonight's meeting from whatever was sent in the packet. For residents, there were 15 people in favor and 5 opposed to the food and beverage tax. So that's a 3-to-1 margin of residents in favor who were willing to speak out. For the businesses, it was 15-3 not in favor. So that's a 5-to-1 margin. So it's very clear that the business community is not in favor of this food and beverage tax, while the residents are really in favor of this food and beverage tax. And as a side note, I looked back at some meeting minutes from December 2019, and what was amusing to me was that a lot of the same people who have spoken at these meetings spoke back in 2019, and they said exactly the same thing. Their position hasn't changed, their attitudes haven't changed, whether they were for or against, this tax. So I think it demonstrates people have made up their minds, whether they're in favor or not in favor. And no matter what is said, nothing's going to change the minds at these points. Okay, the next slide. I want to also call out that last year with COVID, the city provided some COVID grants for businesses who needed some money to help them out. What I noticed was that the business owners that have spoken during these public meetings over the last 2 months, they received money from the city council to help them last year, in their time of need. And so it seems clear that the city was willing to help businesses when they had a need for COVID. And now the city definitely has a need, and these same business owners are not in favor of helping out the city at the current time. Okay, the next slide. So I want to summarize, I guess, Bruce had mentioned that there were some structural studies done back in 2009 and 2018. And I think everyone's been seeing on the news, with the Miami condo disaster, issues with the infrastructure, they knew about it years in advance. To me, it sounds somewhat similar. If we have a quake here, not even a big one, but a medium-sized one, it could take down this building. And you've got city employees in this building that could potentially be injured or lose their lives. If this happens, I think the city could potentially be held liable for negligence. I mean, we've got demonstrated documentation that this issue has been analyzed and looked at for years. And when I look at some of the dates, February 2018, Bruce mentioned that in 2019, there was a structural study done by Andy Stricker to identify problems. So that's back in 2009. Back in 2018 in March, because the city council asked David Venata of Toledo Architects to provide a study. He came back a month later and he said the city hall had been put together in an ad hoc manner and it does not meet structural, ADA, or safety standards. The entire ventilation system needs to be revamped and in some areas installed. There's no outside air coming into many offices of the building. They still need to take care of the air intake problem and structural reworking. And Mike Benefeld had mentioned during the meeting that the council does recognize that we need a new city hall. So I'm just concerned that, there's a lot of documentation, and if a quake does happen, and we've seen quakes in Bandon, 4 of them in just the last month, 2 5.9s, even though it's Southern Oregon, potentially we can have a quake here. There was one in East Grisham, 4.0 just last month. said there's the possibility of a quake coming. And if we kick the can down the road, the city could definitely be held liable. You know, in addition to that, I think taken to an extreme, business owners who have voiced their opinion against the food and beverage tax and helping to get the city hall renovated for rebuild could also be liable because their voices are a strong opinion of the business community, and they could be potentially influencing all of the counselors on the decisions that you make. So I just want you to be aware that, you know, there is the possibility of liability if, you know, something happens to this building and people's lives, you know, are lost, those family members are going to start suing. We're seeing that in Miami, you know, could potentially happen here. And finally, I just wanted to summarize, I guess, almost 2 months ago, the counselors had a weighted ranking survey that Bruce had put out. And so I'm just summarizing these results, color coded with green being the highest number to red being the lowest number, just for visibility purposes. And from this chart, you can see that the highest one ranked was Gower East by 4 of the 5 city council people. And what I wanted to mention was that I guess the one person that didn't comment at the time was Robin. And she had mentioned that the site selection is too important to rush and not ready to fill out the form as it's presented. And since she was sworn in back in January 2019, you know, the food and beverage tax has been discussed twice in 2019, 9 times in 2020, and 20 meetings so far in 2021. So that's 31 meetings that we've been discussing the food and beverage tax. So I guess the question I would ask all the counselors is, you know, 31 meetings in 2 years isn't enough. How many meetings are necessary to make a decision, whether it's yes, in favor, or no, we're not in favor? But I think we've come to the point where, and we're asking, please make a decision now. You know, we've been waiting a long time. There've been a lot of discussions. You know, you've ranked the buildings. You know which one is your favorite. So move ahead. You know, just make a decision and let's move forward. Whether we're going to implement the tax or just reject it. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Daryl?
You, Daryl, for all your research. Wow. I'm impressed.
Les Sinclair, I live here in Cannon Beach on Coolidge Street. First of all, I just wanted to say that I am completely in support of the fire district's needs. I'm in support of the police department. I'm in support of the city's need for a new city hall. I'm in support of the water resiliency initiatives. I see lots of things that are very worthwhile and important. I personally support the food and beverage tax, or I suppose I should call it the prepared food tax. I think it's fair, more fair than the other ways that we can raise money. I understand completely that there's a lot of opposition to it and a lot of concerns on the part of restaurateurs who believe that I think that this puts all the burden on them. But this is really something that we all share. We're all going to pay the tax out of our own pockets. We're all going to enjoy the benefits of whatever comes of the funding. I think what we need to do is figure out a way to get beyond an us versus them situation. And that's what I think it is right now. Building on what my predecessor said, what I see is this issue has become so polarized that I believe everybody has made up their mind. I think that everybody has decided what their position is, and I don't believe that anybody's going to change. Some of it's based on actual facts. There was a lot of what seemed to me to be incorrect information early on in this process. I don't think any of that's really gone away. You know, whatever facts we chose to believe at the time we made our mind up are what we've done. This is a situation that I don't think is going to be satisfactorily solved by a voters referendum. We're simply going to see where the line's drawn, and you know, half the town's going to win and half the town's going to lose. And I don't think that's going to do us any good. This really needs to be solved by the government. I have great faith in all of you. But I'm afraid that this is going to have to be a well thought out decision, taking everybody's positions into an account and try to turn it into something where we're all working together again instead of us versus them. And I just hope that you can come up with a way to do that. Anyway, thank you.
Anybody else?
Bob Sorelli, Arch Cape resident, but I do serve on the fire district board. I think that most people in the community take a few things for granted. That's you turn your faucet on, you get good clean water, flush your toilet, it's disposed of properly, and you dial 911 and you're going to get police or the fire department to respond. We don't want to take those things for granted, but we do. Whether it's done with a food and beverage tax or not, I think it's your commitment to make sure these things continue to run efficiently.
Okay, next.
Hi there, I'm gonna read mine, if that's okay with you all. And do I have to wear this mask?
I have to wear it.
Vaccinations.
Good, but I do need your name and address.
Sure. Jeannie McLaughlin, and I live at 139 West Washington, PO Box 623 in Cannon Beach. And anyway, listen, I'm a full-time resident of Cannon Beach since 1975, thus 46 years. And I was the first owner of Geppetto's toy shop, so I had some business experience, and also a Spanish teacher in English for teacher for English as a second language. But for the last 20 years, I have worked as a hostess for Moe's Restaurant in Cannon Beach. I often feel like an ambassador of Cannon Beach. Some people tell me that, to when day trippers and often international guests at the beach or downtown ask me about Haystack Rock and our tufted puppies, art galleries and places to eat meals and ice cream, of course, and candy too. First, though, I want to thank our mayor, Sam Steidel, our city manager, Bruce St. Dennis, and our 5 councilors for your in-depth, and I do say in-depth study of this complex issue for stable funding for our town. Whatever is decided tonight, may we remain allies. We need to be amigos, really. Together, we will solve our problems for the greater good. We are so fortunate to live in this small community where if we choose, we can walk or bicycle rather than drive. Our restaurant servers, prep cooks, chefs, bussers, dishwashers, cashiers, hostesses, and managers all work very hard and deliver good meals and service. Our one seafood market, for instance, espresso places, pizza, ice cream, candy shops, they put in full days serving up their products. For the past 15 months, because of COVID, our food and beverage industry has been hard hit and has been on a roller coaster economic ride. Personally, I wish that we could wait a year or two before so that we can all get back on their feet. However, the need so that our fire department can function efficiently it's pressing, yes. That need is very pressing. Thus, if we pass the food and beverage tax, the hundreds or even thousands, as Robin mentioned recently, day trippers who come regularly on weekends and those staying in our hotels will pay for the services that they use. So I've been coming full circle finally. I may lose my job over this, but hold on. I'm going to work 2 hours now on Mondays. For instance, our 2 bathrooms cost $80,000, I think, in 1 year. Was it just last year? Very recent. Anyway, I do not know how much our city pays for those doggy gloves. What do they call them? For dog poop, I think. that our guests can easily get at the handy machines, but I'm sure we pay a pretty penny for that. And we like to be a canine friendly, community, so I wish the dogs could pay taxes, but I do not know, let's see, for a month, I've been doing this, I really have. I have been informally interviewing day trippers and other visitors on the beach or downtown, only about 5 a day, I call them respectfully our guests. That's what we call them modes too, by the way. Every one of them, though, has stated that they love Cannon Beach and they will still tip their usual 20% or more to servers who then share with cooks and hustlers and whatever. A lot of restaurants share. I think the servers share. Evidently, our fire department needs to keep update technology for their fire trucks and hire eventually 1 or 2 more paid employees to do surf rescues. The emergency calls from visitors for heart attacks, surf rescues and so forth. Correct me, James, if it's not correct, but I think he said they were up about 70% this past year. And it's tourists, it's our visitors, our guests. May we be, is my last paragraph, promise. May we be creative and collaborative as we go forward. Another issue that needs our attention of what to do for our employees at the City Hall and Police Department. We need to charge more than $25 for illegal parking in Cannon Beach. Those fines all add up to help our city. That's a small thing, but it does add up. The city manager and police chief can speak more about their needs if anybody else needs to know. Evidently, there are some city halls structural problems that we just kind of mentioned, and a carbon dioxide and mold problem. Yikes. Anyway, surely our local contractors, I'm really wondering about this. Our local contractors and health professionals could work together. Maybe that could be a good blue ribbon committee. I don't know. And repair what needs to be repaired and then work toward, we need a permanent solution, of course. Can we all what about selling the South Wind property and dedicate that money to build a new city hall and police department? So that, I don't know. It's a thought. Anyway, eventually, surely Seaside and Cannon Beach entrepreneurs could build affordable housing at the Seaside Junction and have parking available with a shuttle into both towns to reduce the amount of traffic. So anyway, I could be a little bit of an idealist, but I like to be a realist too. Thank you for your attention to these matters, all for one and one for all.
Thanks. Anybody else? Okay, we have some.
I'll talk.
Oh, sure, Bob. Go
I'm waiting for someone else.
ahead.
Those were some hard acts to follow. I was thinking about sneaking out the door back to my car after some of those presentations. We live in a beautiful place, don't we? I feel so lucky to live here. I love this place and I want to see it become even better than it is. We live in a place where people come to get away and vacation. We get to live here. I'm Bob Attia, I live in Cannon Beach, and I am 100% in favor of the proposed, it's either a food and beverage tax or prepared food tax. That's still up for debate, maybe. But what that tax really comes down to is improving the collective health, safety, and well-being of everyone who lives, works, and visits Cannon Beach. Our fire department badly needs additional funding to be able to keep up with delivering the services we expect from them. When I was a young probationary firefighter in the 80s, one of the old guys told me, he says, most people don't think about or care about the fire department until they need them, and then they want them there now. And the same thing could be said about our police and our public works. You don't think twice when you turn the faucet on. You expect water to come out until it doesn't come out anymore. You take it for granted. Our fire department volunteers, we have 15 volunteers and 3 paid staff. If you added up the cost of hiring 15 paid guys, our volunteers provide several $1 million worth of benefit to the city. And there's lots of other incredible volunteers in the city. I mean, all the people on the committees, there's HRAF, there's the food bank, the farmer's market, the library, people pick up litter. I mean, CERT, I mean, just on and on. We're very lucky to have all those volunteers. A lot of the city operates on volunteers. So with the fire department, I'm going to focus on the fire department. That's where I've done most of my research. It doesn't mean to minimize or downgrade the police department or public works. They are all important. But with the volunteers, we're basically getting a free ride. And sometimes we're asking too much of the fire department volunteers, I think. The call volume's going up 40% this year, and the number of volunteers is actually declining a little bit. That kind of worries me. I'm worried about the long-term viability of our fire department. If those trends keep happening, more calls, less volunteers. We're burning guys out, unfortunately, and I don't blame them. As volunteers, they have no duty to respond. When I was a paid firefighter, I had a legal duty to respond. I couldn't pick and choose my calls. I had to go on everything, whether I wanted to or not. Our volunteers, they have a moral and ethical duty to respond, but they have no legal duty to respond. Thank God most of them respond on the really important stuff. So I'm gonna have a little fun with the city council right now. Your volunteers, their volunteers, okay? So let's say when you run for city council, part of the agreement is you agree to be available for coffee with councilors 24/7 for the 4 years you're a councilor. You agree to meet with any citizen any time of the day or night, whenever they want to talk. So let's say you've had a long, hard day, you're exhausted and you flop into bed, and at 2 a.m, your pager goes off. Somebody wants to have coffee with councilors. So you jump out of bed, you get dressed, you rush to your car, and you get halfway there and they change their mind. So you get recalled. So you go back to bed, you get undressed, and you can't go back to sleep. But eventually you do. And you wake up the next morning and you're groggy and tired because you didn't sleep very good. And you make breakfast and you're just sitting down for breakfast and the pager goes off again. Somebody wants to have coffee with councilors. So you get in your car and you drive down and you meet with someone for 45 minutes. And then you go home and your breakfast is cold. You eat it and you go off to work. And then your pager goes off about 2 a.m. or 2 p.m, middle of your workday. And somebody wants to have coffee with councilors, but they're halfway up Chapman Point. So all 5 councilors have to go to Chapman Point, and 2 of you have to rappel off the side while your fellow councilors belay you down. And you get to meet with somebody on the side of Chapman Point to have coffee with councilors, okay? That's just funny, but that's what we're asking of our volunteers. We expect them to be jack of all trades. They are responsible for structural and wildland fire suppression, emergency medical services, hazardous material response, extricating people out of motor vehicle accidents, surf rescue, high angle rescue. And it isn't just responding on calls, it's the hours and hours of training and drilling they put in. It's a big commitment, and God bless them. I mean, wow. I found out a couple of weeks ago, we have no paramedics in Cannon Beach. It takes a lot of time and effort and money to become a paramedic, and all volunteers, there's no paramedics among them. There's some that are intermediates, but not paramedics. The nearest paramedic is the medics ambulance in Seaside. If they're busy, it's Gerhardt, and if they're busy, it's Warrenton, unless we call somebody from Manzanita or the Halem, I don't know, but it's kind of scary when I found that out. I really feel like our fire department is treading on thin ice. And with that additional funding, I think things will just get worse. The increase in visitors to Cannon Beach is stressing and overloading infrastructure. It's negatively impacting emergency service response. The call volumes are increasing. Over 3/4 of their calls involve visitors to our town. And police calls, I think, are very likely similar ratio. So here's the deal. Infrastructure costs money. Police and fire departments cost money. New buildings cost money. City and public works employees all cost money. And where should the money come from? How do you fairly and equitably spread the burden? Right now, the burden falls on property owners and overnight visitors. They're paying the lion's share of costs in the city, and they keep the city running. But the day visitors pay virtually nothing towards the collective good while consuming and stressing city resources. So I think that day visitors should contribute to the collective public good because it ultimately benefits them. If they pay a food and beverage tax, they will be contributing to the betterment of the city. The city will be a better place. They'll be safer while they're visiting here. Cannon Beach is a nationally recognized tourist destination. If you drive around, look at license plates like I do, you see people from the four corners of the country here. It's amazing how far away we come. We're this nationally recognized tourist destination. People come here, and at the same time, we have a fire department that's just barely getting by and trying to do the best they can with what they have. Our city hall and police station aren't just unsafe. I mean, the conditions embarrassing to me, how bad they are. Our city employees should not have to make do with substandard, unsafe, inadequate, unhealthy work environments. We can do better than this. We should do better by them. We should have the best fire department, the best police department, and the best city infrastructure we can possibly have. We should never hear we don't have money for that, not when we have this enormous untapped potential source of revenue to make things better. So I'm asking you respectfully, begging, pleading with you, please pass this tax. You could do it tonight in 5 minutes if you wanted to. I don't believe in a blue ribbon panel. I think a vote would probably be more divisive if we drag it out to November. I would like to see this pass sooner than later. So please consider that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Christie, do we have anybody on Zoom? I know Betsy signed up. Is she?
Yes, Betsy's here.
Betsy, if you're listening, now's your chance.
Hello, everybody. Can you see and hear me now?
I can. Hello, Betsy.
Hello, Sam. Thanks, you guys, for all the hours and hours you're putting in on this. I actually will keep this short. I would really love to see the council pass this tax tonight. I don't believe we should go out to a public vote. We were not able to choose publicly whether or not we wanted to raise room taxes to support services in the city in the past. This is a tax that supports all the wonderful things that everybody's just discussed tonight. I also would like to see you pass the tax because these services have to happen. And I have a choice about whether I want to go out and eat and pay a prepared food tax. If we decide to go ahead and fund these services through an increase in property taxes, I won't have a choice about that. I will just have to pay for that. So that's all I have to say. Thank you again for your service. And let's, we cannot afford to not do this. Let's get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Let's see, Jeannie already said hers, so we had some hands raised.
Yes. Let's see here. Cindy Beckman.
Cindy?
Hello.
Hello, go ahead.
Thank you. I was a little unsure on how to get on. My name is Cindy Beckman. I am with Ecola Seafoods. I tried to turn my camera on. I don't know if that works or not. We have had our business in town for 28 years, since 1993. I want to very quickly tell you a very personal story. In 2018, our building caught on fire. I am 100% in support of the fire department and the police department. Our building would have burned to the ground and possibly the buildings around us if it wasn't for the fire department. The first responder into our building to put out our fire was my son-in-law. He was a volunteer. Standing beside me at 3 a.m. was his wife, my daughter, who was 4 months pregnant. I cannot emphasize to you the amount of support I have for the fire department and the need that I see that they need funding. The majority, Mark can attest to this, of the people on our call were not Cannon Beach firefighters. They were from the fire districts that came to help support. So I don't want anybody to be under the impression that I am not 100% in support of the fire, 100% in support of the police. However, I do think we have a big divide with the businesses, and I think that the city council has some responsibility to show support for the businesses. Our margins are extremely thin in the restaurant industry, smaller than, obviously nobody there, it appears to me, is in the restaurant industry that's speaking right now. Our margins are way smaller than a gallery, way smaller than a clothes store, way smaller than, the hotels are. And our labor force is extremely limited. We don't have a school. We don't have affordable housing. When we start talking about the cost to implement this kind of thing, the thing that I think would help bring the businesses together on this is, possibly something in there that would help support the businesses financially. I know that we're talking about $2,500 on $1 million of sales. That won't even begin to cover our costs. And I'm not only talking about costs in terms of, I've contacted our point of sale provider. We will have to get a new point of sale system in order to implement this tax. I mean, our system was over $15,000. Because, we have weigh scales, we have scanners, we have an online order system. I mean, it is just so complicated. I've contacted our provider. Our system as it's set up now will not be able to divide the taxes out among the items. So we have some huge costs involved with implementing this tax. I am hopeful, that if the city council decides to move forward with this, they will provide some avenue that we can submit some sort of documentation or something that would help provide the businesses with a way to help cover their costs. Like in our case, this is going to raise thousands of dollars, and across the board, it's going to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think part of the reason the businesses are so opposed is all those things I said. Our margins are low, our labor force is limited. It's going to cost us money, and not just money in terms of, say, the hard dollars, but it is a huge deal on our time. Like when the person was talking about the city councilors and trying to compare those to the firefighters in the police department, the owners of the businesses and the employees, we're burned out. We are burned out. I can't tell you how many hours a day, how many days a week we work in the summertime. And then to think that we're actually going to be out not just more time, but also hard dollars above what $2,500 on $1 million would help us cover. So I would hope that the city council could somehow provide an avenue for the businesses to make sure they can recoup their cost to implement. And I would propose that the $2,500 on $1 million, in our case, it may be fine in some cases, but certainly in our case, that would not cover everything. The businesses have had an extremely tough time. An example is McGregor's, our neighbors. They came, I don't know exactly what avenue they chose, but they were asking about putting a couple of tables out in front of their restaurant. I get it was complicated, but it took a long time. By the time the city council approved it, they were back open up inside again. I just think that the city council could go a long ways toward trying to be business friendly. in trying to understand, you know, that the businesses are having a really, really, really hard time. And I think that there's some sense when we get together and we talk with the other business owners that there's not an understanding of that hard time that we're having. And that there's not a hard understanding, you know, that this is a burden. Like I've heard, you know, the majority of testimony sounding like this isn't a burden on the restaurants. This is going to be easy to implement. This is going to be easy to do. I would ask you to please don't pretend that it's not a burden. It is a burden on the restaurants. On the other hand, you know, I'm really torn on this because, like I said, I stood in front of our burning building that would have been 100% burned to the ground if it wasn't for the Cannon Beach Police, if it wasn't for my son-in-law and the volunteers that, you know, commit lots and lots of their time and their hours. So I guess I would just like to ask the city council, you know, to really think through the hard costs and the time and the lack of time the businesses have, and try to also think when businesses do come to city council asking, you know, for potential changes or ways that could help the businesses, to keep in mind if they decide to implement this tax that you know, I don't think that the businesses are not in support of the fire or police. I just think that they're concerned about the cost and what it would mean to implement this tax and how it would affect their business. And I hope the city council will show that they are pro-business in our town on future things that come about. But thank you guys so much. Appreciate all you're doing.
Thanks, Cindy. What's we got?
William Norton.
William Norton. Okay.
Hello. Thank you all on the council for your time and effort to really make a difference in our small community here. The topic tonight that you're talking about, I think, is very important for all of us to understand a lot of what is really going on behind the scenes. I'm here to offer some hard facts for you. You know, our budget for our fire department is about $2 million a year. And out of that $2 million, 5% comes from property tax, basically. And that's the one thing our chief can hang his hat on every year, that is going to be that amount or a few pennies more each year. Imagine yourself in a business that is in the process of saving lives and helping people in need, and only knowing that 5% of your budget is guaranteed through property tax, and the rest of it is money that you have to go out and find every single year, whether it's through levies, bonds, or grants. All of those are short-term answers to a long-term challenge, which is how do you continuously fund an important service for the community? The chief has seen his call rate skyrocket this year in the first 4 months of the year, 34% increase. He doesn't have 34% more budget to fund those increased calls, so he's got to make do with what he has. 74% of the calls that our community responds to from the fire department are from outside of the community. You know, we have a lodging tax here that helps support different functions within our community. And it's borne by those that come here to visit our community. Many of those that come to our community on a weekend basis are day trippers that don't pay any money towards the services that they use. And 74% of those services are from people outside our community. So it's a conundrum, of course, to find a way to help our community survive these big challenges. Somebody made the comment earlier tonight about what if we had an earthquake? What if we had a catastrophic forest fire? What if we had some kind of event in town that caused a massive amount of destruction. How do you respond with those types of events on a variable budget and a hard to recruit volunteer community? So I guess you can read from my comments that I obviously support this prepared food tax. I think it's an important thing for us to really give strong thought about. And I definitely understand a small business mentality of every penny counts, especially in the food arena. Cindy made some very smart and telling comments about how do we support those food and beverage services here in our community. Maybe there's some way we can adjust their first year's percentage to help them through that adoption process of new software and new services that they have to buy to afford the tax. So that's kind of the extent of what I wanted to offer up tonight. And thank you for the time.
Thank you. Okay, I don't have any more attendees, but I do know a couple folks signed up after we got started with the Zoom. So if anybody out there wishes to speak, they may now. Come on up.
I go to the podium.
Please.
Hi, I'm Amber Fowler. I'm at PO Box 657. I really appreciate everybody's time and this forum to be able to talk about this stuff as a community. I really appreciate the work of our firefighters and our city staff and our volunteer staff that makes this community what it is. I feel very strongly about the fact that we are still in a pandemic. I think everybody witnessed what happened last March and April and May and June who lived in Cannon Beach full time, where Cannon Beach was a ghost town. I think that we all had a tremendous concern about how many of those businesses would survive and what it would take for them to survive and how that would change the course of Cannon Beach and what everybody loves about Cannon Beach and the feel of Cannon Beach. I think that the consideration of the timing is by far the most important thing on the table right now. I don't think that a food and beverage tax or any other measures that we could be creative and come up with are in dispute. I think that we know that we're in this position where we have to change the way we do things because of the current conditions. I think we have an increase in tourists. That's not going to change. We have a small town that we want to maintain the feel and the culture of, maybe preserve some of the original culture that started 50, 60 years ago that sounded magical. And I wish I could have been here during that time to participate. That's what drew me to Cannon Beach in the first place. And I really feel like we have to consider what it takes to hold on to this small businesses that are here instead of it becoming a big box place. And we do these things and we try to strain them in a time when they can't be strained any further. And I think that it's not a function of whether or not we want to pay for our firefighters or we don't want to pay for our firefighters. I think everybody wants to pay them. And I think that there are a lot of other options that can be taken to think about that and to cover that. And I think it's a longer term strategy that we're talking about that needs to be addressed. I think that many people who have given comment have raised the needs of affordable housing, of a new city hall, of a daycare, of a school. We need all of these things. So why not think about a more holistic strategy or a longer term strategy as a way to build those things in? Maybe the way we've been doing them in the past doesn't work. The way the firefighters have been volunteer, maybe that doesn't work anymore because of the needs of our town. So the police force is part of the city staff. They all get paid, yet they respond to the same calls that the firefighters respond to on a volunteer basis. I don't know about you guys, but that seems really strange and wrong to me. I think that there's some consideration that should be gone into how we think about this in the future. And I don't think that this is something that should be done without a vote. I really think that these are big topics, and I think that we should have a vote for them. I don't think we should rush them to be half-assed about it. I think we should be thinking long-term, and we should be thinking and being open to brainstorming, even if some of the ideas seem outlandish or radical. Like, dream impossible things. We should be able to put things on the table, do the research, do the analysis, and make decisions. And I feel like hastily making decisions right now, it's not the right way. So I just encourage everybody to be thoughtful, to be mindful about our conditions. We're all ready for the pandemic to be over, yes, but we're not through it yet. And the businesses are still feeling all the strain. And I know from myself, from my friends that are running these businesses, they're really upset about the idea of a food tax, even if it starts in 6 months or 7 months. Let's get a year or two out of it. And there are nearer term things that we could implement now to bring more capital into the town. And I'm happy offline to talk about that and to share my ideas. But I just really encourage some thoughtfulness and a pause instead of being hasty. And that's all I wanted to say tonight. And I thank you for the time.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm Michelle Valagura, PO Box 719. I'm a terrible public speaker. Sorry, Michelle Valagura. I agree with what Amber said. I just feel like because you're not for the food and beverage fat tax doesn't mean that you're against the fire department. I moved here because I lived in a place that I had to evacuate 4 times a year. I love the fire department. I do think there's other ways to come up with revenue. I think not putting it to vote is wrong. And I think that we're also not thinking about how the people that we've called our frontline, like the people that have been serving us, how this will actually affect just the people that are taking your bill and they can't afford to live here. They live in Seaside, and we're not considering the fact that this is going to be a strain on them when they go home and somebody yells at them for what? I mean, I deal with it. I deal with I deal with people, tourists all the time. I have a shop. I just feel like there's a different way. That's it. And I hope it goes for a vote. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Okay. Brian.
Thanks.
on it.
Brian Taylor, 256 North Hemlock, PO Box 51. Thank you all for putting your time and effort into being on these committees. We all know that they're thankless. Food and beverage tax. I think that what it does to our communities, it puts us on the map of places where you know you're going to go and they're going to tax you one more time before you leave. Are we going to see more visitors or less visitors because of it? That's yet to be told. But I believe that, keeping Cannon Beach, a sanctuary that it is, this peaceful place, this place where, you can still get an honest meal at the right price is, the right thing to do. I support our fire department in a lot of ways, and I believe that there's possibly a better way to do that. Which, I'd love to be on a committee to move forward with that. I'll volunteer my time to do that for the city. But I think that, at this time, I don't know if it's the best thing to do for our community, our workers here, because it's July 6th and I just know some people that are already freaking out and they're 6 days into this thing. So, part of the burnout, part of the, everyday grind that we all go through, we all do it. And it's hard on people. So I think this is one more thing that they have to try to think about and try to figure out again with the pandemic and the influx in tourism because of people moving to our state. People actually, instead of just using their home as a second home, actually living in it now, right? Our community growing that way. So we really have to be mindful of, all the factors we have coming. Thank you all for all you do for our town and our officers keeping us safe, our fire department keeping us from burning down. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, I'm heading towards last call. Okay, thank you all for who spoke. We will have our discussion after a few other little topics first.
We do have one more person.
Oh, Bob last again. Okay, Bob, let's hook him up. Okay, Bob.
I think everybody said all the things I would have said, except that I just wanted to say I'm very much in favor of supporting this idea. I had the fire department on my roof when I had a fire in my chimney about 10 years ago, and it was absolutely frightening to see that happen in your house and sparks coming out of it. And those guys were here in minutes. It was amazing, on my roof, hosing down and stopping the fire. So between the fire and the police and our city hall needing to be upgraded, for sure, we don't have a choice. I think we have to act now. I think you've done a lot of deliberation. There's no question about it. Going back over several years, this isn't a quick decision. And I think this would be a good time for the council to decide in favor of a food and beverage tax. Thank you very much. Bob Wayne, Cannon Beach, Box 520. In Cannon Beach. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, that's it for this public comment phase. Like I said, we got a couple items before we get there, and then we will talk. So we will go to our consideration for resolution 2120, purpose of establishing a special event fee resolution. Yeah.
Mayor, council, thank you for having me. I just want to let you know I had gone for my run and yet knew I had to get back because this is what this is all about. I mean, the compelling nature of this, that's what public meetings are for. And I'm so glad we get to be back at this and what it's for. And also to be in the same room with Jason. But so first, before I started, I want to say thanks everyone who signed up and did the Cannon Beach ESP.com survey for transportation system. We had 161 participants. That's a great turnout, I think, for a survey, especially when it was COVID and we were trying to figure out how to reach people. But please go back online in the next 2 weeks because we have a parking specific survey. Say that 3 times really quick. But anyhow, if you go into CannonBeachTSP.com, you can take the resident, the business owner, the employee, the visitor, any of those surveys that you feel you're compelled to take. So in the next 2 weeks, we're going to be getting information out on that. And now I will segue into special events fee. And there's more than minutes that Jen is worth because she's the one who said, we really haven't done a resolution to pass those fees. So we passed the actual ordinance and everything for the special events, but we neglected to do also the accompanying resolution for the fees. And so I'm here before you. I've given you earlier when I came before you for the ordinance, I'd given you a cost comparison of the fees from surrounding areas. And I know that's not generally why you do those, but it just gives you a good sense of other event fees. Just to remind you, we will 501c3s and 501c6s and city events are exempt from any cost. The private property would be $50. That's about $1 a head. And then minor special events, $100, then major $200. Any questions?
Could you remind me of what kind of events would fit the private property special event?
It's really anything that's over 50 and that's going to kind of impact public parking or public services. So if somebody's having a big event and they realize that it may impact traffic flow or parking situations in their area, then that would be
like a garage sale?
That's not necessarily, so that's that, but we do have a permit for that as well. And so that's something that you might want to consider, because I don't think that's currently a fee attached to our rush.
Would that be more like something like a retirement party at a private home?
Yeah, yeah.
Or wedding.
A wedding, yeah, some type of.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so. We need a motion?
I move to approve resolution 21-22 for the purpose of establishing a special event fee resolution.
Second.
Okay, in the last discussion. Nope, Jennifer?
Counselor Risley,
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy,
Yes.
Council President Benefield,
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes. Okay, our next one is kind of a last minute thank you. We have prepared a resolution for the purpose of demonstrating the success of our no fireworks zone these last few days. So Bruce, do you have anything you want to comment on that before I go on?
No, well, from my standpoint, it was wildly successful. It shows what happens when a group of people comes together to go ahead and address an issue like this. But Jason was much more directly involved than I was. So Jason, if you want to talk about it a little bit.
It was just a great team effort. And I think it was a big team. And I think working with Deb and Bob and just their advertising was a great help in town, and some new tactics that we use with the signage at the north and south was a good warning to everyone. But also working together with the fire department and CERT and emergency management to work with the CERT team worked out great to have those volunteers out there as observers. And it ended up being a very quiet 4th of July. And I was very impressed with the videos that Deb put on her page showing the nice calm fires in Cannon Beach and the melee in other areas. So we were very happy with it. We certainly had a lot of enforcement down on the beach. We had at least 4 to 5 officers each night. We started Friday night, Saturday night to do the education, and they contacted each of the fires to educate them, and everyone was already aware and said that's why they came down for that. And so then on the 4th of July, we added the park ranger and U.S. Fish and Wildlife federal officer down at Haystack Rock, and they were beneficial. In fact, at one point they had a spread down to Arch Cape because of some fires that were down there, and they were educating people down in Arch Cape as well. That was a great team effort. Everybody got along great. Everything went really smooth.
I wanted to thank everybody also. We have a long resolution. I'd rather just do the thank yous. Kind of what Jason was saying, we had a team that was very impressive. I will contest one little point because my section of the beach had some rowdy partiers that were competitive singing. So that was an intriguing change from years past. I definitely want to thank Jason for the police department and the effort that they put forward. That was a full court press, and you guys did an excellent job. The professionality of our police department was very evident to those of us who are volunteers that came in and sit over there while they're sitting over here. That was kind of fun. The fire department was on hand and ready to go if we'd had a bad emergency. I didn't hear any. Did we have any calls on the 4th?
We had several campfires that we were chasing up in the dune grass.
And that was it.
Tons of them.
So, no houses burning down and no hands blowing up and things like that. So that was impressive. I'll go back to the police department, and that includes the bike boys, their efforts. It includes other folks within the city staff that had done some stuff. I would also add my thanks to all the folks. I would call them Debbie's team, because the message getting out for the past year and beyond, and the real effort they did in the last few weeks, I guess, from the flyers that were put out with the photographs and the text that was done very well. I had flyers out in front of my shop and watched people snag them and read them. That was the signs that Les and Lynn did. That worked so well. Are we going to collect those signs and save them for next year? Or I've had some people ask me what to do with the sign.
So if I could
Please.
speak briefly, first of all, it was Lynn and Deb that were
Okay.
that were doing that. We've collected the signs that were put on city properties. We had permission to do that, and we'll have them available for next year. But the rest of them were paid for by individuals. They bought them. The flip side says, please don't litter. I'd like to see that message stay up.
And I think in some sense, the fireworks message should also stay up through the rest of the summer, because we do get those. I know Lolly was very involved in dispensing a lot of those. I know the A-Trap folks were talking it up quite a bit and were involved. Shoot, I know there's other folks. I definitely the impressive 4th of July evening when we did our briefing, to have so many uniforms, because we had the ODF and the state parks, our guys, our CERT team. And I do want to go back to my CERT team. I saved them for last, because we have gone through this last year desperate to do things, not being able to get together. And here we are, pretty much jumped into a major effort of communications. Through Rick's establishing our communication system and getting us radios and training us on them has been a very eye-opening, I know, for a lot of us, what kind of effort we might have if we do have a more of emergency. So again, with Rick's leadership and how we are preparing for emergency management, I want to thank him. I'm sure I'm missing folks, but with that, let's move to our resolution.
We're looking for a motion, Sam?
I think so.
All right, I move to approve resolution 2123 for the purpose of demonstrating the success of a no fireworks zone.
Seconded. Any comments? Jennifer?
Counselor Ogilvy?
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy?
Yes.
Council President Benefield?
Yes.
Counselor Risley?
Yes.
Mayor Snydell?
Yes. Oh, and I do have one last little anecdote I want to mention. I have had 3 calls today from other mayors wanting to know how in the world we did that. One of them is our neighbor to the south. They were hit hard, particularly by one group that was something that we need to all be aware of. They sent their one police officer that they had on duty down in that area to go and tell them, hey, they literally had a large body of folks surround the fire and not let the policemen near it. So they had some troubles. That was kind of an eye-opening. Luckily, those folks aren't here. So just we got to be vigilant. Okay. Moving on.
It was a beautiful silence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Can I say something? I think we've started a new trend about fires on the beach thing, okay? Like 500 people, probably over 1,000 people loved it so much. Probably on the press tonight, actually Channel 12 was, everybody loved the pictures of Cannon Beach, fires on the beach. And oh, that's so beautiful. I'm making reservations to come next year. So, and it's gonna be a lot of fires on the beach. So it's a trend now.
Good. Well, we'll work with it.
Thanks for your.
What happens?
Welcome.
Definitely,
It was-
definitely kept it in front of us all.
Okay, before we go on to our next item, which is the one we were talking about before, I'm going to take a short break. So we'll have a 5-minute break. Okay, everybody. We are, oops, I lost my place. Hang on. We're talking about the continuation of our discussion on the prepared food tax. As I recall, and I could be off, as we ended, we were talking about the ballot language. Did we get anywhere on that, or?
I think that Ashley has a report on options and how you can set up. And then there's any other discussion, obviously, from the council.
Right. Let's start with this.
All right, good evening, Ashley Driscoll, City Attorney's Office. So I have not been in your last couple of meetings. Emily was here. But I wanted to give an overview of the two different processes the council is still considering. So both processes are still available to you. One is a tax enacted by the council. And that would just be a resolution that's passed using our normal resolution process. So if it's not unanimous, it's at 2 separate meetings. And then that ordinance would be effective 30 days after you adopted it. So that ordinance you guys have seen on quite a few occasions at this point. So that one is ready to go. Your second option, which is also still available, is the voter referral. And in order to do a referral to the voters, you pass a resolution that adopts your caption, your question, your short statement, and your explanatory statement. Emily and I have been working on those. We just had some questions answered by the fire chief today. So we anticipate having a draft of that ready for your meeting next Tuesday. And that would be just to take a look at the language, make sure that we're comfortable with it. Your ballot title is pretty highly regulated. So your caption is basically the title that goes in the ballot, the voter's pamphlet. You only get 10 words. Worked on that one for a little while to get your best 10 words in there. Then you ask a question. A question can only be 20 words. And then a short statement, which is 175 words. And then your explanatory statement can be 500 words. So the objective here is to be clear and also impartial because it's going to be in the voter's pamphlet. So the city attorney's office's objective has been to get the clearest possible statement that is also impartial to be referred to the ballot. So we have until August 13th to actually do that. However, you never know what could potentially happen. So we are looking at, I believe, August 3rd to get that in front of the council. Your meeting next Tuesday would be to have any discussion about the language, to make sure that you feel comfortable with it, et cetera. And then I think as Emily talked to you guys about last time, the public employee prohibition on campaigning would start essentially when you guys refer that to the ballot. So after that is referred, public employees would not be able to campaign. So I'm available for questions, but that's just a brief overview of where we are.
I'd like you to go through the resolution process one more time.
So the resolution process is relatively straightforward. You guys did something very, very similar when you passed the marijuana tax a couple of years ago. So next Tuesday night, you're going to take a look at the resolution. You're not going to vote on it. And the resolution just says, here's a question that we are asking the voters. It has, your caption, your question, everything that's going to be in the voter pamphlet, and saying that you're going to, cause this to be in the November 2nd election. And that's your official action. And as an exhibit attached to that will be the language that you guys are considering including in your municipal code. So for all intents and purposes, that exact same language that would have been in your ordinance is now going to be an attachment to your resolution and part of the question that you're asking voters.
Okay, now go through the process of enacting the ordinance.
So just assuming that it's not a unanimous vote. So if we're going to do the ordinance, next month or next week, we would, publish the text of the ordinance 7 days before your council meeting. We would have a first reading of the ordinance at that council meeting. If it's not a unanimous vote, it would go to your next council meeting. You'd have a second vote. If it passes, then it is adopted at that time. However, because it's an ordinance that implements a tax, it can't be done on an emergency basis. So like all of your ordinances that are non-emergency, it would become effective 30 days after you adopt it.
And can you state that it would not become effective in 30 days, but no longer?
Definitely. You can, the ordinance would become effective, but the tax wouldn't be effective. Yeah, that, we would start collecting the tax 6 months from now or a year from now.
And if that resolution were made today or motion made today, there's sufficient time to bring it to a vote next Tuesday.
So which resolution would be made today?
Motion to vote on an ordinance next week.
So I'm going to look at Jen. Yes, I think. So we just need 7 days because for an ordinance for you guys not to have to read it in its entirety, and I'm pretty sure you don't want to read it in its entirety, it needs to be publicized 7 days before the meeting. So we would have to get that ordinance language out in the packet and out in the community for 7 days before you have your first meeting on it.
And the one that's currently on the website, been available for several weeks, is that the same one or is there?
That would be the same one. Yeah, and we'd have to take a look at your charter language. That is a good point that it has been out, but I think to be, out of abundance of caution, I would, include it in your packet and say, we are going to be voting on this ordinance 7 days from now, a first reading of.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. I move that the council approve a prepared food tax tonight to be split between the Cannon Beach Rural Fire District and the city to be effective July 1st, 2022. With the city providing some assistance to restaurants to collect the tax and the restaurants receiving a percentage of taxes collected.
Before I ask for a second, I have a question of the timing. So again, if this passes or does not pass unanimously tonight, we go to next week for the second.
So this is not a vote on the ordinance. What I hear Nancy saying is that she wants to get that process started. She wants us to start publicizing that notice now for a first reading next Tuesday.
Yeah, I want to make sure that the council's passing the tax instead of going to a vote.
Okay, yeah, so that's just a first movement.
Okay, what I'm asking is if we start this process, do we still have the opportunity and enough time to do the vote process if this fails?
So yes.
Or should we do them both?
So I mean, kind of depends. So what I believe your charter says is that, you have to publicize the ordinance 7 days before your first reading. So then it says if it's not a unanimous vote, then you would have to do 2 separate readings at 2 separate meetings. It doesn't say that those meetings have to be a month apart, but that is typically when your voting meetings are. So the council could make a decision in terms of when you meet in order to tighten that timetable. But, that August 14th date, it's either August 14th or August 13th, that date's coming up pretty soon here.
Yeah, and that's my concern. I'm concerned that if this this effort proceeds but fails, do we still have time to go for the vote? Or should we do them consecutive or side by side?
Well, that's up to you. I mean, there's a bunch of different scenarios. So if it's a unanimous vote, it's very easy. You know, it is that you publish it 7 days later, you have a unanimous vote. You can do both readings at one meeting and it's adopted, but it's enacted, but it's not effective for 30 days after that.
Or if it was not unanimous, we could schedule another meeting within a week and have a second reading and still meet the time requirements for taking it to a vote.
Yes, you could do that. I believe, and I'm going to check in just 1 second, I don't believe your charter says that there's any required time period between those two readings. So you could have those meetings within a month of each other, within a couple weeks of each other.
I don't think there is a requirement, but
yeah,
from that.
Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we're up for discussion, and I think this one's serious enough that we should go around the room, make comments.
May I ask a question of Nancy? Could you please explain the part about assisting the restaurants? I assume, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what I assume you to be saying is that you'd like to explore that in a way that we'd craft the ordinance to do what you're asking. Am I correct?
I'm thinking of when I say assist the restaurants in getting the equipment or the software, whatever they need to collect the tax.
So would you be supportive of putting language in to the ordinance that gives them the monetary needs for?
At least a percentage, if not, I think we probably need to put a limit on how much we assist them, but sure, yeah, I would definitely want to have some language that is a little more specific on how we assist them. Yeah.
I guess I'd prefer to see it done administratively rather than into an ordinance itself. I think we need a little more study on that particular point. Not everybody's going to need the same thing.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying about not everybody needing the same thing, but I definitely think it needs to be in the ordinance.
I'm just anticipating that this discussion might come up. I'd ask Ashley if it's possible for the city to take this particular action, and do you want to give your answer?
Yes. So first of all, I did just look at the charter. The meetings just have to be on different days. There's no temporal limit on how many days have to go by. The question about being able to assist the business owners, I mean, I think as has been discussed at many of these meetings, you guys have a variety of options of doing it. The one that has worked really well in the past for the city is a grant program, that some of the funds are set aside for, helping businesses, get up to speed on this, and then they can apply for a grant, submit whatever documentation that you guys require in terms of, actual invoices and so forth. And then you make a decision on funding, whether that's, 100% or, some percentage of, or a certain dollar amount to every business. You can certainly do that.
And there's a cash flow issue. If we're trying to help people get their equipment and software, everything in advance, we would probably be able to find a funding source and then use that as the funding source. And then as we start to collect funding, we could go ahead and repay that funding source. So we don't have to worry about whether or not we're collecting, and assuming it's July of 2022, we can make expenditures prior to that and pay ourselves back. If that's how y'all want to deal with it. Brandon, did I make no sense on that?
Absolutely clear.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry if my look says I'm quite tired. I have one more question of Nancy. Are you flexible in the date that you mentioned for the implementation?
Yes, I just want to make sure that, we have something in place, but a date, whatever the council decides is fine.
Okay, thank you so much for your candor.
In that regard, I'm having a hard time seeing that it takes a year to get ready to do that. I guess I'd rather see it effective January 1, beginning of a calendar year, which is a tax year for many. But I mean, I just like to see it get enacted, but I don't understand why it takes a year. And maybe there's some good arguments for that. I just give restaurants the opportunity to earn more money without collecting a tax. It's not really, it's not their expense.
Well, I could look at it.
I'm just
either way.
sure why that long.
But I think for me, it's more of a gesture on our part in that this business that we will be taxing. And I know it's a pass-through tax, but they have had an incredibly hard year. And I see this as a way of giving them an opportunity to make back some. I don't believe that some restaurants might take years to make it back, some less.
The fire chief and I had a discussion about this, and there's a couple of differences. One is if you do it in January, you're going to have probably two of the lowest quarter collections. So you're not going to recoup a whole lot from January to July. The other is that because people have been saying one of the concerns is the time frame and just coming out of COVID and all that, we're looking at it. In the long term, it's a long game. Well, I guess you call it the long game or whatever. This is going to be something that's going to help us for a long time. And so as long as we all have a date to work from, we can go ahead and budget those kind of things that, it would be great to have the money today, but this is it's a game changer, and giving it a little bit more time doesn't really hurt. And might help, some people get past some of their concerns. So that's just a recommendation, but you gotta remember too, our quarter 3 and 4 are not our highest. So it would go in place July 1st, which is our highest. And then the next one.
Yeah, and I think that's a good argument. I would use that same argument, say that those are low collection times, and it gives everybody an opportunity to get everything set up, the reporting to the city, all the collections, all those things, when it's not as critical and they're not as busy. So I think that's
fair comment
on my side.
Fair comment.
I guess I'll just frame some of my considerations. I understand all the logic and the arguments to move forward with this. It's not our time for.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you.
And I've always been a committed Oregonian for no sales taxes. I have to really make a hurdle to work with this. I had to make a hurdle when we did the TLT. The last iteration of that I was involved in. I was not really involved with the counties added 1%. I remember some of the argument for the first time when it was just totally available and we just did it. That was a different world then. I can't remember the dates on it, but it was the idea of taking it to the vote to a popular vote was just not even considered because it was just so obvious to do. There was a massive argument against it. That said, my preference is to take this to a popular vote. So I think that's important. I think it's an important argument for the community to have. Yes, they'll be divided. Yes, there'll be issues and people confronting each other, but that's in a way healthy for the community. And I know there's people who disagree with that. But that's just my take on it. So that's where I'm going to be at.
I'd like to comment on that. I agree if we're taxing the citizens as a property tax, it clearly should be at the decision of the property owners. We're not proposing a tax on the citizens, the voters. This is a tax on consumers of the services that are here. The impact, economic impact, is on people that don't live here. Therefore, why would we ask the voters? Don't shake your head, I see that, but there is an impact on restaurants in time to set it up. I get that. However, as you say, the long game, it's not a tax on all of us that vote, all of us that live here. It's a pass-through tax on the people that are coming here and benefiting from our services without paying anything. So that's why I think this is a better approach to raising the necessary revenues to provide the safety, security, and comfort to our visitors, and not a burden on the residents. Therefore, it makes no sense to me to take it to a vote for the voters, whether they want us to make a decision or not. It's really our decision. And you want to take it to the voters, say, do you want us to make a decision? But anyway, that's my.
And we agree to disagree, because I think it's a community decision. The community needs to be the ones saying, this is how we want our community seen, visualized, understood, that, and again, I am personally proud of the fact that Oregon has stayed out of the sales tax bait type. It's so that's just me. And that's why I must, from my sensibilities, take it to a community vote. So here we are.
I too would like to take it to a community vote. In fact, when Brandon last time suggested that the issue be separated, it kind of took me by surprise. So I've needed a while to get used to that idea. So I not only would like the public to decide, but maybe for the ask to be separate between the City Hall, police station, and the fire department.
One thing I definitely need to know is, to craft the ordinance, how is it that we're going to keep the funds that would come to the city? Are they going to just go directly into the general fund? Are they going to be segregated just for a new police department and a city hall? I've heard a lot of suggestions, but I haven't heard what we as a council would like those funds to go to, because I don't feel comfortable supporting the idea of something without it being codified ahead of time.
Well, I think that first and foremost, the money that the city receives should go to the city hall and the police department to get that project underway, to pay the debt service. And then if there's anything that we don't have to use toward debt service, that we get in subsequent years, then we need to make that decision then as to what we want it to go for. But I'm seeing it for infrastructure for the city, because that's where the impact is with all the visitors coming in.
Okay, I am still hearing several different things. So say we go about trying to decide about a new city hall and a police station, and we have this restaurant tax, and it comes to the fact that it doesn't move forward for one reason or another. What would you do then?
Well, that's why I would like to see us put a tax together tonight or in the near future, because what do we do if we don't get revenue to pay for a new city hall and police department? Raise property tax? Ask the voters to raise property taxes? I don't think that's going to happen.
I'm not disputing that at all, but I am saying that for whatever reason, what would happen if we had the sales tax and yet a new city hall and a new police department wasn't able to move forward?
I don't know what you mean. You mean for other reasons, if it wasn't able to move forward for other reasons? I think the council would have to decide what to do with the tax. I mean, I think that's really far down the line.
Infrastructure.
Yeah, infrastructure.
Just a mechanical thing. What would happen is that the funds would come in and they would go into a particular fund. And then from there, decisions would be made by the council at budget time as far as where those might go towards. They might be put towards in water resiliency, it might be put towards a city hall. But it goes into, it has a home when it first comes here. Then it gets distributed. That's what we do with a lot of the TLT.
And we'd have an interagency agreement with the parties.
Yeah, we'll need to have, yes, we will have to have that. And we could sort of, and I think that, in just looking at it as a budget officer, with the potential amount of funds and the things that we have facing, if you want to set or make a decision as far as what the top priority is, I think that would be good. If you don't want to make that, then we have a lot of major needs. We have City Hall, police station, we have water resiliency that we're going through right now, and we're just starting it. And you saw what happened when we did the projections as far as what the rate increases were going to be. When we did those, we made sure that we showed you a maximum amount. So we didn't take leftover funds from the previous year and factor it in and those kind of things. When we actually did the rate increase this last time, there were funds that were available as an offset. And so the amount of the increase was reduced. If we have, if we dedicate all of the funds to utility projects, that will be able to offset what the rates might be is moving forward. If you want to do whatever the debt service is going to be for a city hall and give that the top priority, then any funds that are left over, you can say we want to use those towards utility projects. So that's.
But that becomes a budget.
Right. But it goes into this bucket first.
Goes into the bucket just for a place to put it, but then it's decided where it goes from there during the budget process.
Yeah, my recommendation would be overall infrastructure, and then you make a decision whether or not the top priority is City Hall.
If this is kind of a question, if it's in this special bucket and the budget, we start it into a debt service, is there a requirement then in future budgets to maintain the debt service?
You will have to pay the debt service regardless if you use that money for something else or not. So what, and then you're pretty limited as far as where those funds can come. So my recommendation would be that you kind of have a tiered system or whatever. We bring in, this much money, and this much is going to be used for debt service going out for 30 years or whatever it is. And then you have options on the funds over and above that. and you can use it for single projects. You can use it for, to buy down debt service on utility projects.
Is there a way to lock down the fact that the debt service will be paid out of this bucket specifically for a period of time so that future city councils don't start being wild with it?
I think that, well, I think there's a couple of controls. One, I think that, and I asked Ashley to address this in a minute, is that you put in, this is what we're going to do. But the other control is that future councils are still going to have to pay the debt service. So they can say, well, we're going to go ahead and use it for this. And the banks are going to say, okay, now what are you going to do? As far as the funds that you would promise us to, for every year.
Okay, just checking.
Continue along that line of thought, a future council could take the tax away and leave the city without a way to pay the debt service.
Right, but they would still have to pay the debt service.
I know.
No, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Brandon. I didn't mean to, be like talking down, but it's that requirement doesn't go away. And so, yes, what you're saying is possible. And they could, but they would have to do an offset somehow.
And can you think of a way that could be done? It would have to go through a property tax?
I would think it would probably, for an amount that large, I would assume it would have to be a property tax. And that would have to be, ironically, that would have to be approved by the voters. Hopefully, we don't see that kind of behavior in a future council, because it really does put the city in a dangerous financial situation.
Okay. Any other considerations?
Brandon, I'm sorry if I came across improperly. I mean to.
Jennifer, I have to ask you to repeat Nancy's motion, just so we're all up to speed.
So I was going to listen to the recording. To get the last stuff. So let me tell you what I have, and then if you can help me fill in the blanks. The council approved a prepared food tax tonight to split between the Cannon Beach Fire District and the city to be effective July 2022, with council providing assistance to collect the tax, and that's where I got.
And the restaurants receiving a percentage of collected taxes to offset their expenses.
Nancy, if I might, the conversations we've had, if we want to try to tie some of these things down, the conversation that I've been having with the chief is that when we had done the TLT, et cetera, it was 5%. So it'd be 50%, 50%, and then a certain percentage, the 5% coming out of the.
I have 5% down here, but I didn't want to tie us down, but if,
okay, yeah,
but if 5% is the appropriate, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, that's a motion been made and seconded. Jennifer.
Councilor McCarthy,
Yes.
Council President Benefield,
Yes.
Councilor Risley,
No.
Councilor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Mayor Stidel.
No. Okay, motion passes, moves to the next stage.
Can I ask a logistical question?
Please.
So that motion was to bring back an ordinance and you guys want it back next week, correct? So if we get it out tomorrow morning, which is possible, I think a week would be, 7 days later. And so it's going to be a Wednesday to a Tuesday if you guys then voted on it that Tuesday night. Because, I'm a nervous Nelly, I would prefer you guys actually do 7 full days. And so if we could have a meeting, if you want to do it next week, if we have a meeting a little bit later in the week to do that.
I am more than comfortable waiting longer than a week. I don't see the necessity to move this that fast. I have a feeling I'm going to want to see some type of discussion on the ordinance itself.
I thought the reason to make it that quickly, So if the whole thing fails, there's still time to put together a ballot measure.
I agree. I'm just saying that personally, it took longer. I'm fine with that.
Mr. Mayor? First, can we ask Jennifer to tell us what the meeting or that this room availability is next week? And possibly the following week, so we can start thinking of dates?
So next week, we have design review board on Thursday, and that's the only night meeting outside the work session,
And that's 15.
and that's the 15th.
And then anything, we see the 22nd, I'm sure is Planning Commission.
Planning Commission, and that's the only night meeting the following week.
We have a special meeting on the 13th. Can we move that to the 14th?
We could, we don't really, I'm sorry, the special meeting that we're talking about, that was for the RFP, I think, wasn't it? For the RFP, I think that it would be better right now if we were to solve this, get this resolved, and then take a look and give ourselves a little bit more time with the RFP for the Cannon Beach Elementary. So,
works.
Just say move that. We not have one scheduled on the 13th, just reschedule for the 14th.
But you still have a work session on the 13th.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Just another note. So we will post the ordinance, tomorrow. You can still amend it as long as it's the same general subject and the amendments aren't really substantial. So under your charter, we'll post the language that doesn't necessarily have to be the final language. You can still vote on the amendments. So just,
What would you consider substantial?
So we've gone through this again. So I mean, what the language says is, as long as the same general subject, that's fine. If it's substantial, you just have to read out loud those sections that have been changed. What we have gone through as a council is that, if the changes are really substantial, perhaps you wanted to post it again and give the public more time to respond to those changes, but that's not required by your charter.
So such things as the enactment date, how much money would be available in, say, a grant form, those types of things, or,
Yeah, those are of the same general subject and, they can be read out loud.
and where the money goes to.
Mhm.
So do we want to meet on the 14th then?
It's 14, give you enough time. Make you comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, we've already done a lot of the work on this. You guys have seen, various drafts of the ordinance. So what I would do is dust those off and, prepare it for you guys.
Okay, the 14th?
Yeah.
7th,
So
14th.
just to confirm, this is in addition to the 13th or in lieu of the 13th?
In addition, because the
Okay.
13th is a regular work session. We got other things.
I wasn't sure if you would do them all on Wednesday, so.
I would ask that we continue the discussion for the ballot language, because that has a
I'm still on vacation.
timeline built in. So I think I'm thinking we need to do these parallel just in case.
So I get back, if we can do the 15th, I'm here.
We push the meeting that we're talking about, the next meeting for this subject, can we push it to the 15th? Because I want to make sure Ashley's available.
15th was a Thursday. I thought that was design review.
DRB.
So it's actually the day I get home. So I have a flight home at noon, so I'll be home.
Okay, so you'll be able to jump on Zoom. Ashley, they should be able to be, she wants to make sure, so she's coming home and can get on Zoom on the 14th, we think.
Would it be better if we started an hour later?
No, it's my last day, so I'll have a flight home earlier that day.
Okay.
So what time is it? 6 o'clock that we're doing? On the 14th?
Not decided yet.
It's not decided, you say?
No, I'm saying we haven't decided here. I've not heard a time yet.
Oh.
I heard 6 o'clock. Just
Mhm.
talking to Jennifer, because Jennifer knows everything.
But Sam, I was chatting with Bruce when you mentioned it. Yes, we can continue the same process. The ballot title again, is, I think we just had some questions. It's done. So we can keep both processes going.
Okay. Okay, then. We're kind of committed to that. So what's any last comments on this? Or we move on? Okay, we're moving on.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Bruce?
Would you like recommendations as far as use of the funds from staff?
I suppose. Why not? Part of the idea, especially on the ballot, if we go to the ballot, but.
For discussion.
Yeah, I think it's part of the discussion of whether we want to put that in the resolution or not, how detailed we want the resolution to be.
Yeah, some of the other jurisdictions have. So, the proposed ordinance in Madras had use of the funds. I believe Ashland had use of the funds in it, and I don't remember about Yachats. Do you remember? So it's pretty simple, just like this will be going towards and then.
And I think that's an important part of it. Okay. I'm moving on to our next topic, which is Parks Committee role and OWEB discussion. Bruce?
Yes, sir. We, at the last Parks and Community Services meeting, a question came up about what the role would be of the committee in terms of the discussions with OWEB. And so my thought up until then had been that we would, you'd have staff member, you'd have our consultant who would be Barry Sims, you'd have Ashley, and obviously the council. So even, and then you had OWEB, we already have 5 parties that are in it. And so if you do want to include Parks and Community Services, I would ask that we're very specific about what the role is as far as the team. Specifically, who speaks for the city when we're talking with OWEB. I think only one party should be doing that.
Okay.
So is ODFW involved at all? In what they would be getting with the situation with Toray Law and what he contributed to the discussion the other day?
I think that the discussion will be driven by the questions that come from OWEB as opposed to discussions that we might have had here.
I guess I'm asking, did you include what we learned from ODFW in the proposal to OWEB?
No, because council did not change the management plan.
I would like to see that there would be some sort of addition, because I think OWEB felt it was or ODFW felt it was very important.
And OWEB and the city, I'm sure, can bring in any parties that they want to bring in this. And I guess it'll depend on where the discussion goes. So I don't know if the city at this point can say, well, ODFW is on our team, because I'm only talking about the team that we will have dealing with OWEB. So if we want to go ahead and introduce them as a party to it, and there's a good reason for that, then we would do it, but they would be like an ancillary part as far as a member of the negotiating team, essentially.
So when you're talking about OWEB providing a response to us,
Wouldn't that go to the parks as well for them to review and look at?
My suggestion is that we keep it as simple as possible and it doesn't go back through parks. But if you want to go through parks, I would like you to be specific about what parks' role is.
I'd like to see them at the point where there's an agreement that they would relook at the report and include what is agreed upon.
Yeah, and then that would be post discussion with OWEB, we would reach an agreement, and then the Parks and Community Services would take a look at that point. Is that what you?
Is Barb on?
I don't know.
I think, let me just try and go back a step here. Are we expecting literally to have OWEB representatives come here and talk to us? Or is this going to be a response to what we send them? They're going to send us questions and comments, and then we send back questions and comments for a while?
I don't know, but our first well, let me see, we've had a contact with Katie Duzick, and we have a conference call set up for either Monday or Tuesday. And they've not sent us any questions on the plan yet, so I don't know if it's kind of an organizational meeting or what it is, or if they've got specific questions. But that's who, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't usually, the people that are doing the regulation don't come to the regulated. If anybody, if there was going to be meetings, it would probably be us going to them. We might be able to go ahead and have them come here if that's something that council, wishes to have a discussion with them. We can ask if we can make that happen. But right now, it's a conference call.
My sense of this is that it's our plan. The city council is the head of this. It is a city plan, master plan at that. They are then going to respond to what they see and what we have sent them. Those responses then are ours to figure out how we answer them. So if we have a question that we need input from Parks, or if we need input from Sims, or if we need input from ODF and WDF and whatever those guys are, and or any other interested party that we need help with, that's the council's decision to call upon them to help answer the question. If that goes into a much more expansive discussion and OWEB really wants to hammer out things, yes, we will call in everybody, I think.
Okay, good.
But I think I'm not expecting a whole lot from them. They're going to look at it and say, oh, nice master plan, and send it back to us. That's my suspicion, just from working on them with them in the past.
And also Barry Sims will be at the table. We won't be calling him in once in a while. He's going to be at the table with us at every discussion.
Yeah, I understand that. So, okay. The parts that I think you're referring to that Scott, anyhow, that we could add to it, I think those are parts that we need to be aware of. And
okay,
the master plan covers that because it covers how we would implement it. There's still a lot of wiggle room within the implementation, as long as we get the master plan approved in the way that we sent it.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay.
And we'll be doing reports to you after every call or meeting.
Yeah, and if it gets to an issue where OWEB needs to talk to the council, we can sort out something.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
This is our meeting.
I have some questions.
Please.
Okay, so this pertains to Karen. Raised meter and box installed cellular transmitter at 539 North Larch. Where is What is that really?
Look at what you're talking about. Robert, I'm sorry.
It's underwater. It's the third bullet point. And it says that there's a meter and box that was installed for cellular transmitter at 539 North Laurel, or Larch, sorry.
That's probably one of the water meters.
Would it be a cellular?
No, it should be the meter module change out projects.
There is a component that does.
Meter module project. They had to lift the meter.
Okay, it isn't like a
Cell phone tower.
cell phone tower type thing. That's kind of how I read it. Yeah, not too far from my house, yeah. Okay, so that's good. The other one had to do with Jeff. I don't know if he's still here. Under, let's see. No, maybe this is for Rick. Emergency management /June, R/D on improved video surveillance for the entire city. I don't know what RD means.
Research and development.
Okay, can you explain that,
Yes.
please?
Research and development that we've been putting in for security measures for the city of Cannon Beach. We started looking at cache site development to be initiated since we had some break-ins in those locations. As we started getting into those security measures, there was also some current police game cameras that we had throughout the city, and we tried to match those and add to that program. As I dove into that program, we realized that that program is very insufficient for our security measure needs. There's battery problems, there's location problems, there's issues with the cameras not working properly, and definitely not providing the security that we are putting stock into it. So we started doing research and development on security cameras throughout the whole city. And that would be at any public building and at any public asset that we would need to secure, just so we could have video surveillance. The police station currently has video surveillance that is not the same as any other place in the city. So we also wanted to get video surveillance research that could possibly be used everywhere and be added to in the future or reduced to in the future, but all be the same program. So we did that research, and we came up with some good solutions before the end of the fiscal year, and we presented it to the city manager. And we had the police department, public works, and IT and myself involved in that conversation.
Okay.
I think one of the misunderstandings when I first read this, I caught it also, and we've talked about it, so it even caught me off surprise. But when you say the entire city, it kind of puts into somebody's mind that every intersection.
No, it's just all the city assets and city buildings is what we looked at.
That's just
City Hall.
It sounded like Big Brother to me for a minute there.
If you don't mind.
And also, I mean, from my standpoint, I said, no, we're not going to have these everywhere. But then you kind of get to, well, what about this? We've had vandalism problems at the basketball courts and things. Do we put one there? You know, because we don't want people to think that we're watching everybody walking up and down Second and all that. And then I think there was at least one or two locations that police thought it might help. And I think Second and Hemlock maybe, so that if there's an accident or something happens, you know, you've got something for that distance, but it's not at all to go ahead and you know, see whether or not Sam's sitting on the porch. You know, we don't.
At 5:09.
Because we know he's gonna be there.
Yeah, but we don't want to go ahead and create that environment or have people think that way. So we're mostly focusing on problem areas. Again, the cache sites, the property out here, just because we don't have a real secure station. So we'll have at least pictures of somebody. So, but we'll be very careful about where we post them. And I think that I really would like to have the council decision as to whether or not we put them in public places, like the down Hemlock, and you know, in the park. I mean, we're not having a problem in our park now. It'd be, if something happened, it would be great if we had a camera, but that's not a thing that we're facing. And I don't want everybody who goes to a park to think they're being watched.
Yeah, kidding.
Okay, now the last one is also for Rick, and it says working on an MOU with neighbors to the east, Greenland Forestry. Well, that's Greenwood, I know. But a draft for Greenwood Forestry to begin May 2021, draft for the recovery evacuation companies to stage equipment in Cannon Beach. What does that?
You want both descriptions on both those questions?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the draft for the MOU for Greenwood would basically be for radio communications inside their area to be common with what we're building here in Cannon Beach. And also to know their mapping area for what the ability for us to move into their lands if we had to evacuate to the east into Greenwood properties. Secondly, the question that you had about the locations for heavy equipment for debris removal. Right now, currently, we have several areas that and a lot of construction in the city of Cannon Beach. And we also have a lot of common local contractors that basically stage equipment. One of the best things that we can ever do is to always have them on hand to where we have an MOU with them in case we had any kind of natural disaster. Ideally, if we knew the natural disaster was coming, like a weather event, we can pre-stage their equipment at a certain location. So if it happened like in the 2007 wind event, you'd already have that equipment on site and then you can start moving material around. And so it's important that they know where to stage equipment if we request them, and it's not a confusion in an emergency. And that's the value of having an MOU.
So that would be like McEwen
Correct.
and others.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's the value, another value of the MOU is if you have it in place and then an event occurs and it's a named event or whatever the term is. When it comes time for FEMA reimbursement, you're in much better position if you already have a contract rather than just maybe calling McEwen and saying, hey, come in, we'll make sure you get paid. Well, we'll make sure you get paid because it's going to be us. So it allows you to get reimbursed if these contracts already exist. And so that's part of the having them in place prior. And then if they are going to be somebody that's going to help us to allow them to use certain areas to be able to stage so the equipment stays within the city.
Also make sure that we have the first bid on them coming in.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question of Jason. Is there something we should be doing with the ordinance on the fireworks to make sure that sparklers don't get a $5,000 citation?
That's completely up to you. In the ordinance, it does say under the 916030 F, it says a violation of this chapter during fire season is declared by the Oregon Department of Forestry and or Clatsop County Fire Defense Board is not, or it enhances the fine one level. So the firework or the sparklers are at $1,000 level already, and that would enhance it to the $5,000 level per the ordinance. And in the ordinance, it says that it's not to exceed $5,000 or not to exceed $1,000, not up to. And you guys have made that decision because it puts the police officers in a bad position of having to decide who gets a $10 fine and who gets a $5,000 fine. And that really should be the judge's decision based on the circumstances. That's why we made that addendum for. So that's certainly something you guys can discuss in a future meeting, how you want to resolve that, because that was, we had 3 citations for the sparkler, and then 1 was for the sky lantern that had gone off. And so that's certainly something that will come in front of the judge later this month, and we'll see what his decision is. But also it should be revisited by you guys if you want to make a change to that.
At least the judge has the ability to adjust that fine if
Yes.
he decides he wants to do that, right?
Yes.
And the officers, do they still fill out a form saying what the circumstances were at the time?
Yep, they all did that with, like I said, there were only 4 citations that were issued and each of them had that form attached to them.
I don't think when all this started, we were gonna have to be worried about sparklers. You know, but we've been so effective that that's where the violations are.
I think the judge, though, would probably love to have our recommendation.
Sure.
Just because, you know, we put all this on him now. So it would be worth a discussion before next year. Okay,
We will move that to a workshop. Is it okay if it's maybe 2 or 3 workshops down the road? Okay, thank you.
anything we're good to the order?
I was gonna ask it during item that was taken off. Do we have an update on the school roof?
Yes, one of my items.
Okay, great.
The pre-bid meeting was held today. It was held between, I think, 3 or 4 general contractors and ZCS. So that happened then, and as a result of our expediting the process, the bid date is actually next Thursday is when we will receive the bids.
Okay.
So that's moving along. And just, you know, one other one, and we could talk about another time. It's, you know, and I'm not sure how the discussion is going to go, but was the city hall, and I sent the information as far as the individual spaces, and then saying, do you want to send that out to more people? If anybody wants to get that kind of feedback, if you want to wait on that, it's.
What's the question? I don't understand.
There's discussion about, you know, city hall being too big.
Oh.
And what my thought is on it, well, if you think it's too big, there must be something that you know doesn't need to be there. So in 3 pages or 2 pages, actually, it's got every single space. And if you say, well, no, the city manager doesn't need an office, then go ahead and you take that one off and it saves like 230 square feet. The office is only 140, but by the time you add the other, the grossing factor for halls and all those kind of things, it comes out to about 220 square feet or something. But you can actually look at it and say, okay, well, I don't need these spaces. But if you look at it and you say, you know, we really need all those spaces, then that's how big City Hall is. In the police station. But it is possible just to go ahead and look at 2 pages and say, yes, no, whatever. And then we can do one calculation to go ahead and say, what's the gross difference? So if we want to go ahead and give somebody something that is fact-based, then we can send out to some of the committees and those kind of things, other interested people, what I sent to you. So I just didn't know if you wanted to try to get that sort of information back.
Could you resend it? Just because I think I've lost it in my 400 emails that I get.
Yeah. Among all the ones that they're saying, how'd you guys do the firework thing?
They're all from Jennifer.
Yes, yeah, she keeps us all very busy.
Okay.
That's all I have, sir.
I have nothing new, so we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.